Coronavirus. This meeting is a teleconference meeting. Advanced public comments were possible through email, mail, and voicemail. And we will also take the live comments today via phone. And that number is 629-255-1911. Please do not call until the project you wish to speak about is announced. And at this time, I will take roll call of the commissioners in attendance. And when I say your name, please say present. Vice Chair Stewart.
Present.
Vice Chair, we may have not heard you here.
Present.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Commissioner Fitz.
Present.
Commissioner Johnson.
Present.
Commissioner Jones.
Present. Present.
Thank you. Commissioner Mayhall.
Present.
Commissioner Mosley.
Present.
Commissioner Price.
Present.
And Commissioner Williams.
Present.
Thank you, commissioners. We have a full commission, and we always thank you for taking your time for the day. The commission must vote on the record that the COVID-19 pandemic requires us to hold a telephonic meeting as permitted under the governor's executive order number 60. And I will call on Vice Chair Stewart to make the motion.
Chairman Bell, so move.
Okay, I think we have to specifically have verbal on the language. I can say that, so I'll make the.
I can do it. I move.
Okay, thank you.
I move that the meeting agenda constitutes essential business of this body, and meeting electronically is necessary to protect the health, safety, and welfare of Tennesseans in light of the COVID-19 outbreak.
Thank you, Vice Chair, and we will need a second. And I see Commissioner Mayhall.
Second.
Okay, there is a first and a second. Is there any discussion to the motion? I will take roll call. The commissioners, again, say present. Vice Chair Stewart.
Present.
Commissioner Fitz.
Present.
Commissioner Johnson.
Present.
Commissioner Jones.
Present. Present.
Commissioner Mayhall.
Present.
Commissioner Mosley.
Present.
Commissioner Price.
Present.
And Commissioner Williams.
Present. Present.
Thank you. Pursuant to the provision of Section 2.68.030 of the Metropolitan Code of Laws, notice is hereby given that a final hearing before this commission is appealable to the Chancery Court of Davidson County or the Circuit Court of Davidson County, this via a statutory writ of certiorari. You are advised to seek your own independent legal counsel to ensure that your appeal is filed in a timely manner and that all procedural requirements are met. You should also seek independent legal advice regarding the applicability of the writ of certiorari in the specific decision of the Historic Zoning Commission. For each case, there will be a public hearing. We ask that the applicant keep their presentation to under 10 minutes. They may reserve 2 minutes as a rebuttal of public comment. We ask that the public keep their comments to 2 minutes unless they have previously requested in writing for 5 minutes as a representative of a group or organization. I want to confirm this with Robin. We have not received any such request for this meeting.
That's correct.
Okay, and no voicemails were received. Members of the public calling in will be heard. And Ms. Ziegler, are there any proposed changes to the agenda?
Yes, we have several. One request is to remove 1615 Forest from consent, so we'll move that to the end. And then there are 3 requests for deferral. That's for 945 South Douglas, 312 South 11th, and 1101 Halcyon. And then we'd also request that we defer the consolidation project until March for a public hearing, with the decision to be in April.
Okay. And as chair, I have requested to move the Second Avenue Task Force discussion ahead of and take it from the end of the agenda to we'll get to that in between before we hear the other project after the consent agenda. Let me say that again. So that the second task force discussion will be moved after the consent agenda. Are there any discussions about those revisions? I see no hands raised. I entertain a motion to accept the revised agenda. And I see Vice Chair.
Madam Chairman, I move that we accept the revised agenda.
Okay, thank you. We need a motion for a second. Commissioner Price?
I second the motion.
Okay, thank you. The motion is on the table, and I will call for the commissioner's vote. Again, please say yes or no. Vice Chair Stewart?
Yes.
Commissioner Fitz?
Yes. Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Jones?
Yes. Yes.
Commissioner Mayhall?
Yes.
Commissioner Mosley?
Yes.
Commissioner Price?
Yes.
And Commissioner Williams?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you, Commissioners. So before we begin with the first case, Ms. Ziegler, are there any council members who wish to speak?
Just a second to double check, but I don't believe so. We do
Okay.
have some comment from Councilmember Withers, which we'll read with those specific cases.
Okay, thank you. First on our agenda is approval of the minutes for December 16, 2020. Does anyone have any comments or revisions? I see no hands raised. I entertain a motion. Vice Chair?
Madam Chairman, I move for approval of the minutes of the last meeting.
Thank you, Commissioner Jones.
A second.
Okay, thank you. I will call the roll. Vice Chair Stewart?
Yes.
Commissioner Fitz?
Yes. Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Jones?
Yes. Yes.
Commissioner Mayhall?
Yes.
Commissioner Mosley?
Yes.
Commissioner Price?
Yes.
And Commissioner Williams?
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioners. Now is the time for the public to call in if you would like to have an item removed from the consent agenda by calling the number 629-255-1911. Items on the consent agenda will be voted on at a single time. No individual public hearing will be held, nor will the commission debate these items unless a member of the audience or the commission requests that the item be removed from the consent agenda. Items removed from the consent agenda will be moved to the end of the agenda. And Ms. Sajid will read the cases proposed for the consent agenda, and then I will ask if anyone would like any item removed for discussion. Ms. Sajid.
Okay, so the first item on the consent agenda is approval of the administrative permits issued for the previous month. 312 South 11th Street has been deferred at the applicant's request. 1615 Forest Avenue has been requested to be moved to new business. 320 South 15th Street is a request for an addition. 1101 Halcyon Avenue has been deferred at the applicant's request. The request for 1008 Lawrence Avenue is for an addition. An addition and setback determination are proposed for 2517 Blair Boulevard. The project for 2812 Belmont Boulevard is an addition. An addition's planned for 2507 Barton Avenue. And the project for 1101 Porter Road is for an addition. An addition and setback determination are proposed for 1903 Fatherland Street. The request for 1406 North 14th Street is for an addition and setback determination. An addition, outbuilding, and setback determination are planned for 1900 Beechwood Avenue. An addition, outbuilding, and partial demolition are proposed for 1702 4th Avenue North. The request for 202 Elmington Avenue is for an addition and outbuilding. The request for 198 Manchester Avenue is for a setback determination. And an addition, outbuilding, and setback determination are proposed for 1818 Cedar Lane. Staff recommends approval of these projects along with their applicable conditions that are noted in the staff recommendations.
Okay, Ms. Audrey? Commissioners, is there any of these items you wish to remove? Let me check the queue and see if there are any others that have any hands raised. Give me just a moment, please. Okay, was that Vice Chair?
Yes, Madam Chair, I have a connection with one of these projects, and so I'm recusing myself from consideration of the consent agenda.
Duly noted. Thank you, sir. Ms. Ziegler, have we received any requests over the phone?
There are no callers.
Okay. Thank you. I see no hands from call-ins or any of the commission, so we will move forward. Entertain a motion to accept the consent agenda. Commissioner Mayhaw.
Yes, Commissioner Bell, I move that we accept the consent agenda.
Okay, I entertain a second. Commissioner Price.
I second the motion.
Thank you. I will call the roll. Commissioner Fitz,
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner Jones,
Yes.
can you come back on that? Thank you. Commissioner Mayhaw,
Yes.
Commissioner Mosley,
Yes.
Commissioner Price,
Yes.
and Commissioner Williams.
Yes.
Thank you, commissioners. Okay, so this, now we will interject here the Second Avenue Task Force, and our Vice Chair Stewart will be taking lead of that presentation. This is Vice Chair, this is Chair again. And one of the reasons that we have moved this to this particular time is for the public to be able to hear how a Metro Historic Commission, jointly with Metro Historic Zoning Commission, has activated after the Christmas Day event. So I now give the floor to Vice Chair Stewart.
Thank you, Commissioner Bell. The Christmas Day bombing of 2nd Avenue shocked not only our city, but the entire nation. Here in Middle Tennessee, so many were affected. Whether you grew up shopping at Nashville Sash and Door, going to the Wild Horse Saloon, interviewed with the businesses and professionals on 2nd Avenue, or ate at the Spaghetti Factory or many of the other establishments, whether you worked or lived on 2nd Avenue, the grand Victorian architecture and the rich history of this place has captured a place in all of our hearts. In the hours following the blast, while the FBI and our Metro Police were working the site, members of the Metro Historic Commission and Metro Historic Zoning Commission began discussions about how we can assist the city and community in this catastrophe. The mission of the Metro Historic Commission is to support and advocate for the protection, restoration, and preservation of historical resources that are vital to our city's identity. 2nd Avenue has been vital to our city's identity for over 150 years. To make our contribution to this effort, the Commission established a task force to connect resources and needs. I was asked to chair the task force. Many reached out to our colleagues and citizens with expertise that can assist in the rebuilding. We held a Zoom meeting to explore opportunities where almost 4 dozen attended, including former mayors and governors and those with expertise in areas that will be required. Working closely with the mayor's office, recommendations were presented and resources made available for owners, residents, and others affected. These range from communication strategies to resources and assistance with rebuilding to funding opportunities and technical expertise. If you and the public would like to assist with this task force, please contact the Historic Commission. If you would like to donate to assist with the rebuilding, the Metro Historic Commission Foundation has established a fund. In addition, the United Way, Community Foundation, Red Cross, Channel 5 have all established funds for employees, residents, and owners. Many businesses in the area, including Rodizio Grill, Melting Pot, Old Spaghetti Factory, and several others, have set up GoFundMe sites. Our hearts go out to the residents, employees, owners, and others affected by this. We look forward to working together with the mayor's office and community to create a vision and then to rebuild 2nd Avenue better than it has ever been. That's the end of my comments.
Thank you, Vice Chair Stewart. Commissioners, do you have any additional comments? This is not really a Q&A with public, but just so that we have information on the task force going forward. Okay. I see no commissioners making any comments again. Thank you. And I believe we have to vote in. Is that correct, Robin?
That's correct.
Okay. That we vote in Vice Chair Stewart as the lead for the second, and we're terming it the 2nd Avenue Task Force. And I entertain a motion from the commission. Commissioner Jones.
Yes, I move to recommend and approve Vice Chair Stewart as our Metro Historic Zoning Commission liaison for the 2nd Avenue Task Force.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Williams.
I second that motion.
Okay, thank you. And Vice Chair Stewart, we do thank you for your time and efforts to represent us, and we look forward to more information about the task force. And I'll now
Madam Chair,
take
if
roll.
you could go ahead and,
Commissioners?
sorry.
Yes.
My mistake. I want to make sure that you are actually going to take a vote on that. I interjected too soon.
Okay, so are we doing the appropriate legal action here?
Yes, you are. Just go ahead and take the vote and you should be good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Dickerson. All right, Commissioner Fitz?
Yes.
Let me ask a question before I go on. Mr. Dickerson, our Vice Chair Stewart does not vote on this, correct?
He could vote on it.
He doesn't vote for himself.
It's not a problem for him to vote on it.
Okay, all right. Well, I'll do that at the end there. He might have other further comments. Commissioner Fitz said yes. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes, with sincere appreciation to Vice Chair Stewart.
Commissioner Jones?
Yes. Yes.
Commissioner Mayhall?
Yes.
Commissioner Mosley?
Yes.
Commissioner Price?
Yes.
And Commissioner Williams?
Yes. Yes.
Commissioner Williams? Okay, thank you. I apologize if I'm not waiting enough time for that. And Vice Chair Stewart, would you like to have comment? Vote in yourself.
Sure, I'll vote in the affirmative on this. I appreciate being asked to do this and really think this will be an exciting effort of the joint commissions, the Historic Commission and Historic Zoning Commission. I think it will yield results that will benefit this area for years, decades to come.
Yes, thank you very much to all. Okay, so we will move on to our agenda. And our first one is 1511 Gartland Avenue. And Staff Paul Hoffman will present the case.
Good afternoon. 1511 Gartland is a prefab outbuilding that was relocated from the neighboring lot in 2020. Staff permitted the shed in 2016 in error and with the agreement that it would be removed after a specific period of time. As installed, the shed sits on the property line on the east, so the owners are requesting a setback determination from the required 3 feet to 0. The shed is clad in a T111 siding and there is no continuous foundation. In addition, the scale of the building, specifically the eave height in combination with the gambrel roof, is not similar to historic outbuildings. Finding that the outbuilding does not meet section 2B8A for height scale, roof shape, and materials, or 2B8B for setback, staff recommends disapproval of the structure and that it be removed from the site within 60 days of the commission's decision.
Thank you, Mr. Hoffman. Is the applicant on the line? Scanning the queue. Okay. I don't see the applicant. Okay, Ms. Ziegler, have we received any public comment?
No public comment and no callers.
Okay. So we will close public hearing and commissioners' discussion. Commissioner Price.
Yeah, this seems to be an unfortunate situation where the building was originally approved, however erroneously, but with no public comment and with no comment from the applicant, I think we are prudent to go ahead and approve the staff recommendation for removal. And so if unless there's any other comment, I'm ready to make to make that movement.
Okay, Vice Chair Stewart.
If you'll go ahead and make the motion, I'll second it.
Okay. Yes, with respect to the outbuilding at 1511 Gartland Avenue, I move to recommend the staff disapproval.
Okay.
Second by Commissioner Stewart. Second.
Okay. Thank you for the first and the second, and I will take the roll call. Vice Chair Stewart.
Yes.
Commissioner Fitz.
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson.
Yes.
Commissioner Jones.
Yes. Yes.
Commissioner Mayhaw.
Yes.
Commissioner Mosley.
Yes.
Commissioner Price.
Yes.
Commissioner Williams.
Yes.
Thank you. Also, just remind if you are on, just please mute yourself so we don't get that feedback from outside. Thank you. Our next project is 1830 Fifth Avenue North, and our presenter is Mr. Hoffman.
Hello. 1830 Fifth Avenue North is an application for demolition of this contributing building in the Salem Town overlay. The structure dates to 1925. Several of the commissioners attended a site visit to look at the building last week, and notes from that meeting were included online and in your packet. Access to the structure underneath is limited only to what is visible from the vents at the rear of the right side. The portions of the structure that are visible are only between 6 inches and a foot from grade and show evidence of water damage and termites. Several have also been cut through for unknown reasons and sistered onto. The applicant submitted 2 engineers' reports, which indicate that the substructure is not sufficient. Some sagging is normal on a building of this age, but as you can see here, the Engineers and staff's inspections confirmed that the roofing structure also is in need of replacement. The walls and floors on the interior of the home show that the structure is sloping in each direction away from the intact support remains there. It would need to be supported in order to place the new foundation, and the existing framing may not be strong enough to withstand that effort. The framing could not be reconstructed or repaired until after the foundation has been relaid. Essentially, this is a building that was built cheaply and quickly constructed, and so it has not withstood the normal factors of age and use since it was built. In summary, staff recommends approval of the proposed demolition, finding that basic repairs will result in the complete loss of the historic building and that the application meets Section 5B2A for appropriate demolition.
Thank you, Mr. Hoffman. Is the applicant on the line? If so, please unmute yourself and announce your name, please. I don't see Mr. Zeitlin on there other than another Mr. Zeitlin, but that his hand is not raised. Okay, all right. Ms. Ziegler, do we have any other public comment?
No public comment and no callers.
Okay. We will close public hearing and commissioners with discussion. Commissioner Mayhaw.
Yes, I attended the site visit, and I appreciate Paul you setting that up for us. I agree with the report from staff. This is certainly not a gem of a place. It does look like it was put up very cheaply, and it's obvious with the condition that it's in. I just want to say I agree with the staff recommendation to permit the demolition.
Commissioner, the applicant has joined us online. I want to be sure we did close public hearing. Legal, is it okay if we reopen?
That would be fine.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Mr. Zeitlin, are you on the line?
I am.
Okay, sir. You have the floor. Please, just for public hearing, please state your name.
My name is Jeff Zeitlin. I'm the builder. I think Paul did an excellent job of presenting, and I'm just on the phone in case any commissioners have any questions.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Zeitlin. Commissioners? Okay, we're closing public hearing again, other than if you have questions to the applicant and Commissioner Jones.
Yes, Commissioner Jones here. And just to second everything Commissioner Mayhaw just said, I attended the walkthrough. And again, thanks to everyone who set that up. And with the two engineers' reports, visiting the structure and the home myself, and the excellent, staff information on this project. I also agree again with staff and Commissioner Mayhaw's comments that this building was put together very cheaply, and with everything that has to be done, it will be pretty much a full demolition of the building as it is anyways. So therefore, I'm in agreement with staff.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Williams.
Yes, I just want to state that I had an opportunity to look at this property as well, and I commend the staff on their hard work with this, and I just want to voice my support for their recommendation.
Thank you, Commissioner. This is Chair Bell. I also visited on site, and just a reminder of our commission and also to the public that we do assess these demolition requests very seriously and don't give away those very lightly. And again, we do appreciate both the applicant and also our staff, because it becomes harder and harder for us to review these and consider historic preservation. So that is my comment. And Vice Chair, you have comments, sir.
Madam Chairman, with the preponderance of evidence on this and the consent of the commissioners, I move for approval of the demolition request.
Okay, there's a motion. Commissioner Jones?
I second that motion.
Okay, there's a second. Thank you, and I will take roll. Vice Chair Stewart?
Yes.
Commissioner Fitz?
Yes. Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Jones?
Yes. Yes.
Commissioner Mayhall?
Yes.
Commissioner Mosley?
Yes.
Commissioner Price?
Yes.
Commissioner Williams?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you, Commissioners. And we move now to 1101 Holly Street. And staff, Mr. Alexander, will present the project. Oh, let me say this, and I think I've missed this on the others, is the number for the public to call is 629-255-1911. So forgive me for that. Mr. Alexander?
I think he may be having technical difficulties because he's not muted. So if it's all right, I will make the presentation. Let's see. The applicant proposes to construct a new rear addition to an historic one-story transitional Victorian house. The building is on a corner lot where the grade drops dramatically toward the rear along the highly visible left side. This building, as with much of the immediate vicinity, has been commercially used for decades, although it was originally developed in a residential context. The addition will have a hipped roof with projecting gables. The eaves of the addition will align with the eaves of the historic building, and the roof will be 3 feet shorter. However, with the drop in grade towards the rear, the building gains an additional story. The addition is shorter, no wider, and has a smaller footprint than the historic building, but the scale does read large along the highly visible South 11th Street facade because of the size of the gable projections and the upper story window proportion. So our recommendation is to revise those components on the left elevation, and the applicant has already sent revised drawings that satisfy those conditions. The materials are common and appropriate for the age and type of historic building. So with the revisions on the left side, staff finds that the addition meets all of the design guidelines. We'll keep our motion as it is with all 3 conditions, but again, knowing that they have already satisfied conditions 1 and 2. Applicant, or you will move on? Would you like to speak? Mr. First? Okay, I do not hear you. I'm going to give a chance for applicant to respond if there is.
Oh dear, so sorry. I was just on mute. I apologize for that again. Applicant, are you on the line?
Yes, I am.
Okay, please announce your name.
Okay, this is Preston Quirk. I'm the architect for the project. I worked on this building when they did the original renovation to convert it from a residence to Fanny's House of Music. I think they've had a very good business in East Nashville for, I'm trying to remember, 10, 12 years. It's been a while. I would like to thank Councilman Withers for some kind comments he sent in support of this project today. As always, I'm pleased to have a staff recommendation for approval, and we agree to the recommendation. So I'm available to answer any questions.
Thank you, applicant. Ms. Ziegler, do we have public comment?
We do have public comment from Councilmember Withers, so I will ask if Sean is maybe online now.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. Yes, message from Council Member Withers. Thank you for your work with the applicant on the 1101 Holly Street addition for Fanny's House of Music. I have been in communication with the business owner since they announced the idea of constructing a facility for a music school behind the existing building, which is an adaptive reuse of what was originally a house. I am aware that they and the architect have worked with staff to look at a couple of different solutions, including a large rear addition or a detached structure. I believe that this addition solution avoids the controversy that sometimes erupts over outbuilding dimensions or forms or placing full-size buildings behind contributing principal structures. I agree with the staff analysis that this lot's context is unique since it is one of only 3 lots in the 5 Points area that have contributing principal structures facing across street with the side yard facing the busy 11th Street thoroughfare. The other 2 are Red Door, for which an extensive rear addition was constructed and which uses the back portion of the lot as a parking area, and 1101 Forest across the street, which has an outbuilding facing 11th that was constructed prior to the application of the conservation overlay, but that is subordinate to the principal structure which faces Forest. There are no other lots with contributing residential forms that have side yards facing 11th, and therefore I do not believe that this addition will be cited to justify similar additions on other standard size lots in the Lockland Springs East End Neighborhood Conservation Overlay District. I support the staff recommendation of approval of this addition with conditions. I do agree that the window openings as drawn are a bit top heavy. I would suggest increasing the height of the windows on the first floor to address the 11th Street frontage. In lieu of a door facing 11th, I believe that having taller windows on the ground floor, perhaps closer in height to those on the historic house structure, would help to create a more balanced feel. Thank you for your consideration of this application submitted on behalf of a beloved neighborhood small business, Brett A. Withers, Metro Council District 6.
Thank you, Ms. Alexander. Ms. Ziegler, do we have any other public comment?
No other public comment, and there are no callers.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Quirk, do you have any comments to any other public comment?
You did. Thank you. I do not have any further comments. Thank you.
Okay. We thank the applicant working with staff on this project. Okay, we will close public hearing and commissioners for discussion. Or a motion. Commissioner Price?
Yeah, I just wanted to chime in and say, as an East Nashville resident and a customer of many times customer of Fanny's, I think this is a great project. I love the idea of adding space for a music school in the neighborhood, and I worked in a building across the street from Fanny's for about 10 years, and I just love the people there, and I think this is a great project. Thank you to the applicant. Thank you to Councilman Withers for the support and always thoughtful comments. And I support the project and am willing to move make a motion unless there are any other comments.
Thank you, Commissioner. Vice Chair Stewart.
Once again, I will second the motion if Commissioner Price will make the motion.
Okay, thank you. There is a first and a second. If there are no other discussions, we will take the roll. Thank you, Commissioners. Well said. Vice Chair Stewart.
Yes.
Commissioner Fitz.
Yes. Yes.
Commissioner Johnson.
Yes.
Commissioner Jones.
Yes.
Commissioner Mayhall.
Yes. Yes.
Commissioner Mosley.
Yes.
Commissioner Price.
Yes.
And Commissioner Williams.
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioners. We'll now go to 418 Bushnell Street, and Ms. Sargent will be our presenter. And again, I want to remind the public to call in if you have comment to 629-255-1911.
Yes, so the application is to demolish an existing outbuilding and to construct a new dadu in its location at 418 Bushnell Street. The outbuilding to be demolished was permitted by the Codes Department in 1988. Given the date of construction, staff finds that its demolition to meet the design guidelines. The dadu meets all base zoning setbacks, but will be located only 16 feet behind the house rather than the 20 feet required by the guidelines. Staff finds that this could be appropriate in this case, given that the lot is relatively shallow at 136 feet deep, and that the house has a deep front setback at 50 feet. In addition, the dadu is offset from the rear of the house, so the full width of the dadu is not located directly behind the house. The proposed outbuilding has a Tudor design, which is not utilitarian in design, and also does not match the historic house, which is more of a minimal traditional with some Tudor detailing. Staff finds that the proportions of the design may not be appropriate for an outbuilding in the Laughlin Springs East End neighborhood, or for this lot in particular. As proposed, the second floor level height is taller than the ground level. While this proportion may not be atypical for the Tudor style, the proportions are neither typical of outbuildings nor are they characteristic of the house at 418 Bushnell Street. The design is not utilitarian, making this proposed building appear as a second primary dwelling rather than an outbuilding. In addition, the height of the dadu exceeds the height of the house by approximately 2.5 inches. Therefore, staff recommends that the height of the second level not exceed the height of the first level, and that the overall height of the dadu be reduced so that it is no taller than the historic house. So here you have the front and here you have the side elevations. And in conclusion, staff recommends approval of the project with the following conditions. The height of the upper level shall not exceed the height of the ground level. The ridge height of the dadu shall not exceed the ridge height of the historic house. Staff approve the final details, dimensions, and materials of the roof color, windows, and doors prior to purchase and installation. And staff approve the masonry color, dimensions, and texture.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Sargent. I would like to see if there is, the applicant is on the line. Okay. Give us a moment. There are some call-ins. Applicant, are you on the line? If so, please announce yourself. Okay. We might get that coming back in. Have some delay on that. And I think Ms. Ziegler is taking in some calls, so please give us a moment.
Chair, if I might ask a question while we're waiting for clarification of staff's report.
Commissioner Mosley, yes, sir.
When we say that the height of the second floor shall not exceed the height of the first floor, I want to make sure I understand with specificity what we're referring to. Would that be the clear height
of interior space of the second floor not equal the clear height? Because with framing, we can, there's a lot of tricks that someone can play. I just want to be clear both with ourselves and with the applicants so that they can meet our requirements as to from where that will be measured and what we're trying to equivocate there.
So yes, this is Melissa Sajid again. I think when we were reviewing this, we were looking at the height from grade to the bottom of the eave, and then from the bottom of the eave to the top, which it as proposed is, and I think the heights are labeled on this drawing. It's showing the first floor height to be 9 foot? Is that 1 or 3 inches? Anyway, a little over 9 feet, and then above to be 13 feet 4 inches. That's what staff was looking at, just having it be a bit more proportional, like what you see with the historic house on this site.
And so, again, for clarity, I get the intent. The height from grade or slab to the top of the structure would be 9 feet. It looks like 11 or 9 feet and almost 10 feet if you include the structure. And so would an overall height of less than 20 feet be what we're getting at with that comment, Melissa?
I mean, if that is what the result would be, then that could work. As is, the house is a little shorter than what's proposed for this statue, but there again, there may be some wiggle room to increase the eave a little bit depending on what the eave of the historic house is. So
understood. Okay.
So yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, I was on mute. We are trying to patch in the applicant. Applicant, if you're on the line, please announce yourself.
Hello?
Hello? Please announce yourself.
My name is John Cox, 418 Bushnell Street.
Thank you, sir. Yes, would you like to comment on your project?
Yes, I'm not a big time builder or anything. I've raised 6 kids in Donaldson for 25 years, and the architectural houses in Donaldson aren't much to look at. That's why my wife always wanted to move to East Nashville, because of the beauty of it. And this house, this project, and being in Little Hollywood, there's a lot of art there. We love it there, and this is a large corner lot, and the proposed building is visible from Kewen and all the tall and skinnies across the street. And the plans have drawn, I believe, will be really pleasing to the eye than, rather than just a squatty looking dadu. I guess I'm just wondering what would be a good compromise so I can get as close to my plans as possible. And another note is that the grade does drop on the back of the lot 3 to 4 feet as you go west.
Mr. Cox, we may have to address your questions in discussion, but right now, do you have any other comments?
I do not.
Okay, well, you may have some comment after public comments as well. So stay on the line, please. And Ms. Ziegler, do we have any other call-ins, public comment?
No other callers.
Okay, thank you. All right, if there is none, then I will close public hearing. And I see that Vice Chair Stewart, I apologize, I had myself on mute. You might have had some questions for staff or the applicant.
Sure, my question is for Ms. Sargent. I know that one of the comments was that we ran the risk of this looking like a house behind a house. And I really applaud the use of this data. I think it's a great way to have affordable housing in neighborhoods, and I think it's a wonderful tool. But I guess my question is, do you think that with the recommendations that you have, there'll be the possibility of working with the owner to ensure that this doesn't look like a house behind a house?
I think so. Oh, and this is Melissa Sargent again. I mean, other than the dadu being slightly taller than the historic home, really the main concern is the proportion. So I think addressing that will help a lot. Also, we may want to add a condition that if there is a change in grade that's different than what is shown on the plans that were submitted, then we need revised plans reflecting that change in grade. So I just wanted to add that as a suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you. Other commissioner comments for the discussion? Commissioner Mosley?
So because the applicant had specifically requested it, I think within the conditions for approval, and as is typical with outbuildings, that they need to generally be, I can have trouble with a case where the outbuilding is taller than the main residence. I get that the aesthetic of this building or the design is a steeper roof pitch. I think the applicant, through raising combination of raising the eave and lowering the pitch, can meet the at least two of the conditions of approval, and those would be, I guess, recommendations and things the applicant would have to determine more acceptable to be able to achieve whatever their goals are for the project. Certainly, for it to fit within the guidelines, having the combination of raising the eave slightly, lowering the pitch to get the house in compliance with those recommendations would be hopefully give some feedback to be able to move forward and meet the staff's and the staff's interpretation of the guidelines and their recommendations to recommend this for approval.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other comments? And if there's a motion, and to have any other additional comments to the motion. Commissioner Mosley?
Yeah, with respect to 418 Bushnell Street in the Laughlin Springs East End Neighborhood Conservation Zoning Overlay, I recommend approval of the project with the staff's condition and finding that it otherwise meets the guidelines of the Laughlin Springs East End Neighborhood Conservation District.
Okay, there's a motion. Commissioner Williams?
I second the motion.
Okay. There's a first and there's a second. Vice Chair, did you have any other comment?
No, I was just going to second.
Okay, thank you, sir. There's a first and a second. I will take the roll. Yes or no? Vice Chair Stewart?
Yes.
Commissioner Fitz?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Jones?
Yes. Yes.
I'm sorry. Can you say that back, Commissioner Jones?
Yes.
Commissioner Mayhall?
Yes.
Commissioner Mosley?
Yes.
Commissioner Price?
Yes.
And Commissioner Williams?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. We will move on to 1511 16th Avenue South, and Ms. Sargent will be presenting. And again, the number for the public to call is 629-255-1911. Thank you.
All right, the application is to construct infill at 1511 16th Avenue South. The commission approved a similarly scaled infill at this location in October 2019, and the approval for that has since expired. Next slide, please. As proposed, the new structure meets all the design guidelines and is appropriately scaled for the historical context. Next slide, please. The infill is 2.5 stories and will not be taller than the historic buildings to either side relative to grade. Here are the side elevations. And here is a perspective included with the application. And here are some context photos of historic homes. And then the next slide has some more context photos. And in conclusion, staff recommends approval with conditions as outlined in the staff recommendation. The applicant has chosen not to make a presentation, but I believe is here if you have questions.
Thank you, Ms. Sargent, and that is duly noted by the applicant. Okay, I will ask Ms. Ziegler if there are any public comments. Give us just a moment. Ms. Ziegler, are there any call-ins?
No, there are no call-ins.
You might be on mute. Robin, are you on mute?
There are no call-ins.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, well, we will close public hearing and discussion by commission. Commissioner Mayhall.
With no comments from the applicant and with the request to construct being approved by the staff, I recommend that we approve the staff recommendation for 1511 16th Avenue South.
Thank you, Commissioner. Vice Chair?
I second that.
Vice Chair, did you have your hand raised, sir?
Yes, I second.
Okay,
Second the
there's
motion.
there's a first and there's a second, and I will take the roll. Vice Chair Stewart?
Yes.
Commissioner Fitz?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Jones?
Yes. Yes.
Commissioner Mayhall?
Yes.
Commissioner Mosley?
Yes.
Commissioner Price?
Yes.
Commissioner Williams?
Yes.
Thank you. We will move on to 722 and 726 McFerrin, and Ms. Warren will be our presenter. And again, the number for the public to call is 629-255-1911.
Yes, good afternoon. This application is for the new construction of a mixed-use infill building occupying both the corner lot at 726 McFerrin and the next door interior lot at 722 McFerrin. The proposed structure is 2 stories tall with a commercial form and a flat roof. The project incorporates both commercial and residential uses. The applicant is proposing to construct a building with a commercial form on these commercially zoned lots. Staff finds that this form is appropriate to the immediate corner commercial context. Let's move to the next slide. Maxwell Heights is a residential neighborhood that contains primarily 1 and 1.5 story houses. This corner contains the only commercial forms in the district, and a flat roof is appropriate here. Because the adjacent historic context along McFerrin Avenue is 1 and 1.5 story houses with pitched roofs, staff has requested that the height of the development taper down to 1 story as it approaches this context. Where it abuts the neighboring property, let's just go back for a second. Thanks. Where it abuts the neighboring property, the development has a 7-foot wide 1-story section that's about 14 feet tall and has a flat roof. This is followed by a 9-foot wide section where the second floor is recessed before the second level steps flush with the ground level. These design elements, combined with the setback, help to ease the height transition toward this residential context. The building sits 6 feet from Cleveland Street property line and 5 feet from McFerrin Avenue. The interior section closest to the houses on McFerrin steps back 8 feet from the property line to transition into the residential setback. The proposed setbacks meet the design guidelines. Staff notes that if site planning requirements cause alterations to this site plan, the applicant needs to consult with staff and may need to return to the commission for approval of any alterations. With final staff review, the materials proposed are appropriate. The flat roof form is appropriate for this corner commercial context. The orientation is also appropriate with doors opening onto both McFerrin Street and Cleveland. The proportion and rhythm of openings is also appropriate with regularly spaced vertically oriented windows on all street-facing and side elevations. This is the left side elevation along McFerrin. This is the wall that will face the residential form next door. This project may be constructed in 2 phases, with the interior piece being constructed first. The applicant has provided this elevation to indicate an appropriate rhythm of openings that will be visible along this right side of the interior piece prior to the construction of the corner component. In conclusion, staff recommends approval subject to the conditions in your report and on your screen. I believe the applicant is here and would like to speak.
Thank you, Ms. Warren. Applicant, please announce yourself. You are welcome to announce yourself, Mr. Applicant. Okay, we'll give you a moment. We're having some connection there. Mr. Williams, are you on the line? The applicant is on the line, but we may be having some connection issues, so please give us a moment. Okay, Mr. Applicant, are you on the line?
I am.
Okay, please announce yourself, your name.
Yeah, Brandon Williams, the owner of 726 McFerrin and 722. We've been working with Historic for quite some time on this, and really appreciate the hard work. You know, we want to bring something, add something to the neighborhood, especially, you know, a more updated component from a commercial, potentially some more, you know, restaurants along that area. We've been on that corner over 30 years, actually on the lot across the street and developed that as well. So probably before we even had a historic time overlay. So just really thanks for working with Jen and working with her and being further assistance. So I know we came prior, probably a couple months ago, but just glad that we were able to get something that would work for the neighborhood.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Please stay on the line and we may have some other questions for you. Ms. Ziegler, are there any call-ins or public comment?
There are no other callers and no additional comment.
Okay. We'll close public hearing. Commissioner Mosley.
is maybe a clarification for staff, and I think by the applicant's submission, it's evident that the intent is to build the project in its entirety, but it appeared from the drawings that there's a property line that will remain. I could be wrong, but I was just interpreting from lines on paper that there's a property line that will remain between these two projects. And given that we don't, none of us can tell the future, is the staff of the opinion that if phase one is the only building that's constructed, that it would still meet the guidelines without the complement of phase two?
This is Jenny Warren. So yes, it's a good question. My understanding from the applicant is that he is combining those lots. It's not showing that way yet in Metro mapping, which is why we included the map that we included in your report. And that is why we asked, maybe we can jump back a step or two in the slides just to show. That's why we asked for that interior elevation, because we were having that same thought that you never know what will happen in the future. And it's possible if they build this in phases and the interior piece happens first, it is possible that it could be sitting on that lot by itself for who knows how long. So we wanted to make sure that we saw all the elevations. And that's why we asked for that. Melissa, could you pop back a couple slides? There we go. One more, there. Oh, yes. This would be the side that you would see facing the corner where the gas station is now. As Mr. Williams mentioned, they did come before you several months back with a proposal just for this interior lot. That was a 3-story building. It was taller. It did not have a step-down component next to the residential context. So those are some of the features we've worked with them to incorporate into this final design. Trying to help it transition better into the residential context. And we feel comfortable with the project overall. Obviously, we don't have control over what phases may or may not get built in what time periods. So I hope that answers your question.
Absolutely does. Adds a tremendous amount of good context. I appreciate that.
Yep.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I would like to thank staff and applicant. It is rather challenging to try to bring a commercial type of building with scale and right next to the historical content. And I do appreciate the effort. And also I love the idea of height control and transition form right next to the historic house. And there's my question and also request. I think in the staff report, there was reference on the sidewalk requirements. And I understand enforcing sidewalk or design of the sidewalk is not, purview of historic zoning commission. However, design guideline and or the building will be built according to the historic requirement is our responsibility. At the same time, sidewalks is a very important component to the community and especially create walkable neighborhood. So I would like to ask staff, those coordination with planning department or code department, and sidewalk is not missed and, clearly built with according to the guideline. So if we can add or, ensure those things will be happen, that would be greatly appreciated.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Fitz.
Yes. I just I know we've seen several iterations of this project, and so I wanted to thank the applicant for working with staff, and I'm glad that you've been able to reach a design that seems to work for everybody. So thank you for working with staff. And with that, I was going to make a motion unless there was any other comment. So with regards to 722 and 726 McFerrin, I make a motion to approve the staff recommendation with the following with conditions. I believe what Commissioner Johnson was asking for is covered in point 3 of conditions, but if I need to elaborate on that, I can.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Jones?
I second the motion.
Commissioner Jones? Come back on that, please.
I second the motion.
Okay, very good. There's a first and a second, and I just want to clarify Commissioner Fitt's comment, and want to be sure Robin is clear on that for number 3 commenting.
We don't have the authority to ensure that something we don't have the authority to review happens, but we did want to just make that clear because the plan is likely to change based on what the sidewalk requirements are, what the access might be according to Public Works, and that may change the design overall.
Okay, that is clarification, and I believe because of our discussions, it is duly noted. Okay, there's a first and a second, and I will take the roll. Vice Chair Stewart?
Yes. Yes.
Commissioner Fitt?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Jones?
Yes. Yes.
Commissioner Mayhall?
Yes.
Commissioner Mosley?
Yes.
Commissioner Price?
Yes.
Commissioner Williams?
Yes.
Commissioner Williams?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. And to the applicant, Mr. Williams, thank you so much for working with staff. We know this has been several times of reiteration, so we appreciate your collaboration with the staff. Okay, we will move forward to 1620 Forest Avenue, and Ms. Baldock will be our presenter. And again, the number for the public to call is 629-255-1911.
1620 Forest Avenue is a circa 1920 craftsman bungalow with a front-facing gable. The applicant proposes to enlarge existing dormers on the historic house's roof. The existing dormers are not inset from the sidewalls of the house, but rather stack on the sidewalls. Here are the proposed dormers. The existing dormer on the left side of the house is approximately 16 feet 10 inches wide, and the dormer on the right side is approximately 12 feet 3 inches wide. Both dormers are stacked on the wall below. The proposed addition to the dormers would extend the wall of the dormers back to the primary back walls of the historic house. The new dormer portions are proposed to be inset 2 feet from the wall below. If approved, the resulting dormer, so the existing dormer plus the new dormer, would be approximately 26 feet 8 inches wide. I think it could be the way I'm measuring is often with a computer tool, so I got anywhere from 26 feet 5 inches to 26 feet 8 inches wide, but within that range. The main portion of the house has a depth of 44 feet, and therefore the proposed extension of the dormers would result in dormers that cover more than 1/2 of the roof on both facades. In addition, historic dormers are frequently the width or less of the width of the openings below, such as a single or paired windows, and the proposed dormers would be significantly wider. Staff finds that the new dormers are out of scale with the historic house's roof and do not meet the design guidelines. Side dormers that cover more than 50% of the historic house's roof are not commonly found on historic houses in the Laughlin Springs East End Neighborhood Conservation Zoning Overlay. As proposed, the dormer tips the balance of the house's scale from a 1.5 story to more of a 2-story structure. Staff recommends disapproval. Oh, I'm sorry, here is the slide that shows the kind of calculations of the different dormer sizes. So the existing dormers on the left side and is, sorry, I can't see the slide because the menu is in the way. The existing dormer is about 16 feet 10 inches wide, and then another 9 feet 7 inches would be added to the left side with a total result of about 26 feet 5 inches. On the bottom on the right side, the existing dormer is about 12 feet 3 inches wide. And the new dormer would add about 14 feet 5 inches to that, with a resulting dormer width of 26 feet 8 inches. So staff is recommending disapproval of the proposed dormers, finding that their size and location do not meet section 2B10 of the design guidelines for the Lockland Springs East End Neighborhood Conservation Zoning Overlay. Before we move on, we did receive an email from Councilmember Withers. I can go ahead and read that into the record. So this is the email from Councilmember Brett Withers. I have heard from the homeowner at 1620 Forest regarding the staff recommendation to disapprove the requested side dormer addition extensions on this contributing structure. I have discussed this application with the Lockland Springs Neighborhood Association leadership, and we agree with the staff recommendation. The commission has deliberated how to measure dormer widths in the past, and while this design does not make steps to minimize the massing of the proposed additions, and we appreciate that, it is also evident to us that the resulting dormer widths do not meet the design guidelines. It is our hope that the homeowner can work with the designer to find another solution to any additional conditioned space needed at this residence. Signed, Brett Withers. And thanks. So that's the end. Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Baldock. I do, before the applicant speaks, I do see Councilmember Withers on the line, and after the applicant, I would like to give him the opportunity if he wishes to speak. So with that, applicant, please announce yourself.
Is the owner here, Jim?
Yes, I am.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. My name is Jim Snell, and I have lived in East Nashville since 1998 and at 1620 Forest since 2004. So first, I'd just like to say that I believe based on the actual guidelines that my project qualifies for administrative approval, or would have qualified. Your Historic Zoning Commission rules of order and procedure, Roman numeral 8C2I, does allow for administrative approval of side roof additions such as dormers and skylights. This rule does not mention any limitations on dormers on historic roof forms or limitations on dormer sizes. In fact, this rule must be intended to refer to side dormer additions on historic roof forms because dormers that are part of a ground up rear, side, or front addition would be covered under other rules. I think that the statement that it would be out of scale is also not correct, and I'll talk about that a little bit more. So second, the guidelines, the information that's in italics in the document is not part of the actual guidelines, and the rationale that was cited by the staff is not supported by the text of the guidelines. So the guidelines do not specify dormer location or size restrictions. So the statements, quote, as proposed, the dormer tips the balance of the house's scale from a 1.5 story to more of a 2-story structure. The dormer's width and overall scale do not meet section Roman numeral 2B10 of the design guidelines, and their size and location do not meet section 2B10 of the design guidelines, end quote, are restrictions that are not actually found in the guidelines. Also, I think that the statement, quote, tips the balance of the house's scale from a 1.5 story to more of a 2-story structure, end quote, is a subjective statement and is not supported by the proposed changes. In fact, my proposed dormer additions are not out of scale and will add less than 145 square feet. I guess finally, I'm just not sure why something that will not be visible really from the street and does not change the front facade would not get approval under the guidelines. And if Lynn Taylor is on the line, I would like to turn it over to her to give some additional information.
Thank you, applicant. And Ms. Taylor is on the line.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can. Thank you.
I'm the residential designer, and we actually contacted the Historic Commission prior to me starting this project last year, and they just had said, just send us drawings. They didn't immediately go, you can't do this. We had submitted yesterday some extra photographs to show you the public right-of-way of this house, and these two dormers that are added to the back. The shed dormers are stepped back from the existing wall. We do not believe it's going to be barely visible from the right-of-way. So it's really not sure whether they even, the staff should be reviewing this necessarily. The other thing is on the existing gable dormers, the homeowner did not build these, and the historic staff did not approve these, so this does not set a precedent. And the other thing about those existing gables, they sit on the main exterior wall, and there is a bay window that pops out 2 feet in front of that. So they actually are kind of 2 feet back from that, the existing gable dormers on each side. And then with what we sent you yesterday on page, on the page 3 of the document, where we're looking at what the staff recommendations said, they only gave you the dimensions of the existing gable dormers, which are correct, but they also included this roof bird's eye view, which is not public right-of-way visibility. The rear dormers, I want to clarify, the left side rear dormer is only 9'7" wide and sets back 24 inches. The right side shed dormer is 14'5" wide and insets 24 inches too. And so the fact that they're saying that this 1.5 story becomes a two-story statement that Jim brought up is just kind of not true. That's not how this house is going to change. You're barely going to be able to see that. So the visibility is really important here. And I put in here, commissioners, you've got page 4 and 5 of what I sent yesterday of a house you've already approved, 1615 Forest. And Jim found this. You know, I get frustrated with how they mention some dimensions on some projects and not on others. And I submitted this because that side dormer on that house is over 30 feet long, and there was just no mention of those dimensions or anything. Now, I realize that's a different house type. My point is, if you look at the dimensions and you just compare it, what's on this house is much smaller. I also added some other just photographs in there about dormers are different sizes in East Nashville with setbacks and just different designs. So anyway, we want to leave a little bit of time for any questions you might have or rebuttal. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Ziegler, do we have any other public comment?
No, no additional comment and no callers.
Okay, thank you. So we will close public hearing and commissions to discuss or have questions. Commissioner Price.
Yeah, hi, thank you. Thank you to the applicant for the presentation. It's very unusual for me to say this, that I am, in this case, persuaded by the applicant, and normally I hew very closely to staff recommendations as well as the neighborhood association and our council member. I feel like, you know, I'm open to other comments or questions, but that this is a decent middle ground. I'm thinking about the very large additions to other smallish, medium-sized historic houses that we routinely approve and are much more visible and have a larger effect on historic homes than what I see as pretty modest dormer additions here that are going to be tucked up and behind existing dormers. So given that the applicant's not requesting a really large addition, this is a way of adding some second floor space. I don't know, it doesn't offend my sensibilities, and I don't feel like it's a gross violation of the guidelines. So I don't know. I'm in the position, an unusual position where I'm persuaded here that this is an okay situation. Thank you.
Commissioner, thank you. I apologize, and I apologize to Councilman Withers, as I was going to be sure he did not want to comment any further. Legal, can I go back to Councilman Withers just for a moment?
Yes. Yes, you can.
Okay. Councilman Withers, welcome, and thank you for always your thoughtful comments. Do you have any other?
Well, thank you, Chair. One thing I wanted to clarify in the letter that I sent, what I commented is that for the dormer, is that the designer and Ms. Taylor has taken steps to minimize, minimize the massing of this. I would call it an extension of a dormer. So, I and the neighborhood association leadership do appreciate that because it is stepped further back in than even the existing dormer itself. However, one other thing I think I would like to reference is that during the public comment, the rear addition at 1615 Forest was referenced as having been approved. That is actually further on the agenda. It has not yet been approved. And I've also sent a letter with some concerns about that addition as well. So just wanted to clarify those 2 points. But otherwise, this commission spends, as y'all know, because you do this once a month, but spends a huge amount of time talking about dormers. And there are concerns, I think, about taking a contributing structure and adding enough or large enough dormers to it that it sort of becomes a two-story building. And I think that concern is real, even though in this particular application, as Commissioner Price has referenced, in this particular application, it certainly is less visible and steps have been taken to minimize that massing, which I appreciate. But I do have concerns that we will continue to see very, very, very large dormers. In many cases, the dormers that are being referenced, not all, but in many cases, the dormers that are being referenced are not original to the houses anyway. And so it just sort of leads to a precedence of having a 1.5-story neighborhood sort of over time become a 2-story neighborhood. So that overall, I think, is what the commission has ruled on for contributing structures to try to keep the dormers as they are, if they are original to the house or similar to what historic dormers were like. I'm persuaded that the staff are right, that most historic dormers on historic houses were a single bay of windows, and that's kind of it. So again, I don't necessarily think that this particular solution is offensive. I agree with Commissioner Price on that, but I do want to encourage a consistent way of measuring the width of dormers and whether or not they're appropriate on the front or the side of, on the side of a house. I think rear additions truly can be constructed in a way that's less visible, but that does require adding foundation space, which is expensive too. So that's just to say I wanted to make, based on the public comment, wanted to make those 2 clarifications. The Lockland Springs Neighborhood Association leadership and I both do appreciate the steps that Ms. Taylor has taken to minimize the massing of these extensions. Also, that 1615 Forest has not, at least not yet, been approved. I do have concerns about that as well, and just want to be sure that we are as consistent as we can be in talking about dormers. Dormers are different than a rear addition to a building, so it does change the massing of historic buildings in ways that rear additions do not. So other than that, welcome any questions the commissioners have for me, but appreciate the dialogue.
Council members, thank you so much for your time and always, again, your thoughtful and discernment on projects in your district. Commissioner, we did, okay, all right, okay. I'm reminded that the applicant can have rebuttal to that particular public comment. Mr. Snell or Ms. Taylor?
I'll take it. Again, The staff and commissioners only review what's visible from the public right-of-way, and Jim has pasted a little blue line that might be viewable from the left side. Second, the staff or commissioners did not approve the gable dormer, so this does not set a precedent. 3, there are bay windows that pop out on each side, which even shows a setback further for the new dormer on the back. And again, it's never going to read as 26-7 as the staff member had indicated in their recommendations. It just won't be reviewed by that. And I agree with dormer additions, but this situation, this particular house is different. It is not visible. There's just barely going to be seen from the street. And so I believe that the commissioners can rule that this is appropriate for this particular house only. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Snell?
I'd also just like to note, in addition to what Lynn said, that my house sits up on a bit of a hill. So the right side extension of the existing dormer, in my opinion, will not be visible at all from the public right-of-way because the house on that side is very close to my house and will obstruct any view. The left side, again, you can see on that picture with the little shaded blue spot, is about all that will be visible from the public right-of-way. So I don't think that in terms of the core principles of the guidelines, which say that you're only concerned with what's visible from the public right-of-way, that this should be denied.
Thank you, applicants. I just do want, this is Chair Bell, and I just want to remind ourselves, and I know you've said it's commenting, applicant, that of how we view our projects. And as a commission, we view the project specific. And so when we do make decisions, it's not just, and I think you're implying that we don't look at everything, but we do. So just a reminder, and I just want to be respectful about that. Okay, I will now
say something just for that. I just have been in several community meetings that neighborhoods are trying to get overlays on their neighborhood, and I have heard Tim Walker state that we do not review things that's not visible. So we've been told as a community that they don't. So I get that repeated back to me from homeowners. So I just would like for you to know that.
Okay, duly noted, Ms. Taylor. Okay, I will close public hearing. And commissioners, we are back to discussion. I believe, Commissioner Johnson, did you have your hand? Yes, Commissioner.
Thank you, Chair Bell. As a junior commissioner, I struggle this application. And so I'm not architect, and so try to visualize when this dormer rear addition was built, how would it look like? So in the visibility test, because if I'm not mistaken, this new addition to existing dormer is inset 2 feet on each side. So as far as I can confirm, it's not visible from the street, from the front. And so the back side, so I think in the rule of thumb, we are okay with rear addition because it's not alter front view. So we are encouraged rear addition such as 1622 Forest Avenue. That was originally on the consent agenda. So I was struggling, what's the difference between this a huge addition on the nearby neighbors and this dormer modification of this application. So I have been studying, and I think right next door, because under the circumstances we cannot drive, so I have been doing lots of Google Earth View and Google Street View. And seems like right next to it, at the corner of 17th Avenue and Forest Avenue, there's a house with like a cute little dormer side by side. So this dormer and the proposed addition to the dormer is not much difference proportionally. So after careful review and calculation and imagine of the 3D view with addition, I am kind of persuaded this addition is not violation of Secretary of Interior's new addition. And visibility are not, altering, because it's not visible from street. It's not visible from the other side of the street at 17th Street. And I understand it will be visible from the right side neighbor. But I think it's modest. Otherwise, this applicant will have to go behind the house and have addition, and which this applicant is not clearly wanting. So they are asking modest modification. For that, I am in disagreement with a staff recommendation at this specific instance, and I am inclined to side with the applicant on this application.
Thank you, Commissioner. This is Chair Bell, and I'd like to just sort of recap on staff's recommendation. Okay, I would like to direct that to staff about the specific on how we are consistent, and I think again our commission strives for consistency so that we strive. Okay, let me point that out again. We're not perfect, but we do have good intentions to follow what we have guidelines for. But if we could be reminded of how the surface, and I think I'm looking on page 6 of the application. So if either, who did the presentation of this, Ms. Baldock?
Yes, it's me. It's Melissa.
Or Ms. Ziegler. And or Ms. Ziegler, either one.
Well, I can start, and then Robin can chime in if she needs to. So just a little bit of background. I'm not sure. I think I looked this up a couple weeks ago, but I think it was like 2012 or 2011 or 2012 where we first allowed side dormers on historic roof forms. So there is not specific on italicized language about side dormers in the design guidelines because when the design guidelines were first written, side dormers on historic roof forms weren't allowed. They're allowed on additions, but not on the historic roof form. So when the commission considered allowing side dormers in either 2011 or 2012, the commission at the time took a lot of care to make sure that the new side dormers would be an appropriate scale. So the design guidelines kind of reflect what that conversation was at that time. The design guidelines talk about looking at historic dormers on either if a house has a historic dormer, using that as a way of kind of looking at what an appropriate scaled dormer would be. And if it doesn't, it kind of says that staff can look at dormers on other historic dormers. Now, the dormers that are here now, staff does not think they are historic. The existing ones, they're probably added at some point after the building was constructed. And I guess staff, when looking at this project, we found that it did not meet what the design guidelines lays out for side dormers. So that is dormers that are added to the historic roof form versus a dormer that's on an addition, which is not a historic roof form. And I can pull up the language give me a second, because I'm sharing the PowerPoint. I can't pull up things I can pull up on my phone, but I can't pull it up on my my screen very easily, but I will pull up that specific page in just a second. Okay. So the design guidelines, it talks about side dormers, that they should be similar in design and scale to an existing dormer on the building. Again, this doesn't have one, so that doesn't really apply, or at least not a historic dormer. New dormers should be similar in design and scale to an existing dormer on another historic building that is similar in style and massing. The number of dormers and their location and sizes should be appropriate to the style and design of the building. Sometimes dormer locations can relate to the openings below. I'm going to not read every single line, but dormers should be added to the secondary. Dormers should not be added to the secondary roof planes. That's not an issue here because this is a primary roof plane. The roof form of the dormer should match the roof form of the building or be appropriate for the style of the building. The ridge of a side dormer should be at least 2 feet below the ridge of the existing building. The cheek should be inset at least 2 feet from the wall below or adjacent valley. And the front wall of the gable should be set back 2 feet from the wall below. These minimum insets would likely be greater than 2 feet when following the guidelines for appropriate scale. Dormers should generally be glazed and aproned below with the dormers should generally be fully glazed and aprons below the windows should be minimal. The exterior material cladding the side dormer should match the primary or secondary material of the main building. That's the end of that section on side dormers. I'm happy to kind of answer any other specific questions about this project and staff's interpretation of the design guidelines for this project.
Thank you, Ms. Baldock. Ms. Ziegler?
Thank you. Yes, I just wanted to reiterate that if we are diverging from that, that it would be great to have some direction on what is an appropriate side dormer and what isn't, so that we give good guidance to applicants in the future.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Ziegler. Commissioner Mosley?
I have a question for I guess for staff. Are we, is the drawings that we're looking at on the screen now, are they complete? Do they show the extents of the current condition of the house?
I believe they are complete. I didn't see anything to show that they were not complete or that they were inaccurate. The gable dormers are the dormers that are existing, and then what's being added or proposed today is the shed portion behind it.
Yeah, I could be wrong, but it looks like they're missing some information.
It could be that they did not draw the side windows on the ground floor. Is that one of the concerns?
Well, unless it's been removed, it appears there is a rear facing shed that comes off the back of the house, unless it's been removed.
Oh, and that could be, I'm not sure if I have, oh wait, here we go. I have pictures here. Yeah, I think you are correct. There is a shed, and perhaps the designer can talk to whether or not that shed is, if it got drawn, if it's not drawn at all, or if it was not, if that roof form's getting
I don't know that it necessarily changes the argument, but it's important that these things, be complete, correct?
Right.
Yes, Commissioner. Agree. Is there an answer to that? I'll call on Ms. Taylor.
Yes.
You are on mute, Ms. Taylor.
Yes, on the drawings, I show that the back back first floor addition is left off. It's just a shed dormer. And yes, I did not draw the incomplete house because I try to spend a least amount of money for my clients on something like this to make sure that it can be approved before I go further. And we're only working on the second floor with these dormers, and that's it. On the drawings, it says there that it's not shown. So if I leave something off, I put it on my drawings and say not shown. So if you look at the bottom, there's a note about that. I didn't draw the front and back lower pitched roofs.
No, sure. I wasn't implying there was, may not change the argument. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't seeing something.
Oh, I know. It's just, you can't hardly read the text. I'm looking at the screen and you can't hardly read the text. It's so small.
Sure. well, thanks for clarifying. That was all I needed to know.
You're welcome.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Taylor, and thank you, Commissioner.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions and discussions, Commissioners? Commissioner Mosley?
I respect the opinion of everybody on this commission, and I'm curious I don't disagree with the point that Commissioner Price and Commissioner Johnson had made, that this is, comparatively speaking, in terms of a square footage analysis and what the applicant and the designer have proposed is modest. It is absolutely that. In terms of its overall scale, it's modest. And so, with that said, I'm just curious what within the guidelines, is there a particular? I think in tying this back, the guidelines are not being in direct contradiction to the guidelines. I think if this is something that you feel strongly about, and I'm not questioning that because I'm compelled by your argument, but if it's in direct violation or in direct contradiction to the guidelines, we certainly need to defend that in making making a motion for approval of the application as presented.
Yes, Commissioner, I agree. I would like to hear from particularly, and I'll hold that out, Commissioner Price, but Vice Chair Stewart and or Commissioner Fitz.
This is Commissioner Stewart. Actually, of all the discussion and everything that was submitted by the applicant, including the supplemental information, the one thing that does tend to resonate with me is that the guideline statement that if it's not visible from the right-of-way, it will not be reviewed. I think if the drawings that were submitted are correct, then there's almost no visibility from the right-of-way. I do think, in addition, it is a modest addition to this house that does set back in from the width of the existing dormers, and so I tend to agree with Commissioner Price and see that this is a modest addition that, by nature of not being visible from the right-of-way, makes it something of a moot point.
Okay.
Thank you. This is Robin Ziegler, if I could jump in. This is one of the things that we had wanted to clarify with the consolidation project, because it's contradictory. It says it's not reviewed, but then it says that the front facades are reviewed more carefully than the side or the rear. And then there's a drawing that shows specifically a little area in the back that would not be reviewed. And so over the decades, it's always been looked at as, if an addition is that small that it meets that, it fits within that little triangle in the back, that's what's not reviewed. Not that just anything that can't be seen is not reviewed at all.
Thank you for that clarification, Ms. Ziegler. I appreciate that. Commissioner Price?
Yeah, thank you. Just to add a couple of more comments. From my perspective, I appreciate that, in my opinion, I like that we do review everything, essentially, whether it's visible or not. The visibility is not so much an issue to me in this particular case, and as we all know, every case we see is different. There's always different factors, mitigating factors, aggravating factors. But when I read the design guidelines for side dormers, I just don't see how this one is a real violation of the way that it's written. So I don't know that I can give, as Robin asked for, additional guidance. I mean, this dormer, in my opinion, which God knows I've been wrong before, but I think in this case, it is similar in design and scale to the existing dormers on the building. It is similar in design and scale to existing dormers on other historic buildings. I feel sure we could probably find similar examples. The fact that it's set on the rear of the house and the modesty of it, it's compatible with the existing house. So anyway, that's where I am, and I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner.
I'm going to give it just one more second for any other commissioners to make comment. I think when we take the vote, then we'll see how the commission decides. Okay. I see no other hands raised. So I will take the roll call, and when I do, please say yes or no. Vice Chair, Commissioner Mosley, I'm sorry, I've got to make a motion. That's right.
I don't
Sorry.
think we have a motion yet.
Yes, yes. Thank you. Would you like to make that motion, Commissioner? Commissioner Price.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and make the motion. With respect to the dormers, proposed dormers at 1620 Forest Avenue, I move that we approve the proposed dormers as drawn and submitted.
Okay, there is a motion. I entertain a second to the motion. Commissioner Johnson.
I second the motion.
Okay, there's a first and a second. Okay. Commissioner Mosley?
It's on the record, but I'd like to add for that Commissioner Price's previous statements of findings of opinion and fact based on guidelines.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner. All right. Are we ready to take the roll call? Okay. Again, yes or no? Vice Chair Stewart?
Yes.
Commissioner Fitz?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Jones?
Yes.
Commissioner Mayhall?
Yes.
Commissioner Mosley?
No.
Commissioner Price?
Yes.
And Commissioner Williams?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. The motion passes. And thank you, commissioners, for the discussion. And hopefully we can be ready to go forward with more updates on that. Okay. Again, thank you. And we will move on to 4909 Elkins Avenue. And again, for the public to call is 629-255-1911. And Ms. Warren will be our presenter.
Yes. This is an application for infill at 4909 Elkins Avenue. The commission recently approved demolition of the house that currently sits on this lot. The proposed infill is a 1.5-story house that is similar in massing to the existing house. Staff finds that it is appropriate in terms of height, form, scale, massing, setback, orientation, and roof form. Staff should review and approve the final material selections. Here are some photographs of the historic context. The one issue that staff wanted to address is this right side elevation. A majority of the openings on this elevation are square windows. Staff recommends that the majority of these windows be lengthened to be twice as tall as they are wide. A few could remain as accent windows, but the majority of the windows should be vertically oriented. The applicant is present and does wish to discuss the specifics further. In conclusion, staff recommends approval of the application with the conditions in your report and seen here on the next slide. There we go.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Warren. Applicant, please announce yourself.
Yes, I'm Lynn Taylor, the residential designer.
Say that again, please.
Lynn Taylor, residential designer for this project.
Thank you. Thank you.
So my understanding is that when Jenny talked to me, she was only concerned about the front window on the right side. We have tried to keep this house design a small house. That front room on the right, if you look at the floor plan, is a bedroom, and that is a bed headboard wall. The bedroom is only about 9'8" wide there. I already have my egress window on the front. And I like to use these little square windows as doing something different that shows it's modern or new construction versus the same thing as a historic house. So you'll see these on a lot of bedroom head walls, but we also have to have egress windows, of course, at some point. So my understanding is just the front right bedroom that was the issue. And with that bedroom wall not being very deep, we only have like 10 foot of wall space on the outside. And in the past, the Historic Commission, I believe, has allowed a spacing of 10 feet or more between windows on new infill houses. So technically, I'm not even sure we need a window on the right side to meet the guidelines. And the other windows are on the back. So I need a clarification, or I need to go back to my email, because Jenny did email me about this window when she first talked to me. Sure. And so these are, like I said, these are small bedrooms, and they're just going to have to shove a bed up against a window, which is never good for a house or bedroom or whatever. And I'll just leave time for any other questions or rebuttal or whatever.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Taylor.
Chair, if you don't mind, this is Jenny Warren. I can clarify that for you.
Ma'am.
Yes, I did. When I first spoke with Ms. Taylor about this, I told her that, we like to see the majority of the windows on any given elevation to be twice as tall as they are wide, to maintain that kind of vertical proportion that you would see historically. And I did say, if we could elongate those two front windows, maybe the ones in the back wouldn't be as big of a deal since they're so far back. They could be accent windows. And then she told me her reasoning for wanting to keep those in the front shorter. And so, we agreed that would be something we could bring to you guys to help us work out the details of, what do we really want to see on this elevation. So otherwise, we think it's a great project and are in support of it. That was kind of the one piece that we needed some assistance with.
Thank you, Ms. Warren. Ms. Ziegler, do we have any call-ins or other public comments?
No call-ins and no additional comment.
Okay. Public hearing is closed. Commissioners, discussion?
Madam Chair, before I guess to reopen public hearing, okay. I'd like to hear from Ms. Taylor. I just had a follow-up question regarding the windows and placement, and certainly sensitive to, while we don't review interiors, it matters, I guess, at the end of the day. So I wanted to address it. I certainly understand the need at the front, and I imagine the rear window is also a bedroom. I think that there's some discussion here of majority. So I'm wondering if we're counting down windows, is there an opportunity at the bump out bay that both of those windows be, a vertical proportion? In that case, it kind of reads as an elevation, and on two sides of it, you've got these windows that are matching, and it meets a quote unquote majority in that plane. And so I was curious if that might be an alternative. Didn't hear discussion of that particular location there, if that might be an option for us.
Actually, yes. I am not, I haven't finished designing the master bedroom and closet area there, so I just had to throw a window in that area. So I'm thinking I really wanted a larger window, but I just don't know whether it's going to be in a shower or it's going to be in the main bathroom. So there is a really good opportunity there for another window that's more of maybe a casement type, or another two windows or something. So yes, there is an opportunity for that.
Okay, I think maybe that gets us to majority. It's not near the front of the house, but it might be. I was curious if there's some middle ground there. I appreciate your comment. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Taylor, and thank you, Commissioner Mosley. Other commissioner comments or a motion?
Yeah, can we back up to the conditions, please?
Ms. Warren? Thank you.
And I think we're public hearing is well, I can't close it, but I did want to say for discussion, and Ms. Taylor is very thorough in the way that she draws things. But a lot of times when these are turned over in construction, some of the details, like final stone selection, we're still showing stone on a genuine, chimney and fireplace, as well as stone at the front columns. I would like, as staff inspects foundations, and we're showing the 2 columns covered in stone in the front. When we've seen this in the past, what we get is I've seen an 8x16 block stacked up, and then you wrap stone around this like tiny little rectangle, and then the columns bigger or nearly as big as the stone below it. It just is it's not a good look, and so columns are bigger at the bottom and smaller at the top. So I think this isn't an admonition to the designer as much as it is that we communicate to the applicant and they communicate to their contractor that the front columns matter a lot. They're on the front of the house, and the selection of material there is consistent, so that the columns look like they stack on top of something as they would have historically, and that it makes visual sense. I hope that was meaningful in that statement, but wanted to make sure we get that across.
Duly noted, Commissioner. Okay. Commissioner Jones?
I'm in agreement with everything Commissioner Mosley just said. I commend him for pointing that out about the very important piece in the front. And then just back to the windows. I also agree with him that location, the right window on that bump out portion, would be a nice symmetry for me, and also, would hit the majority of those vertical windows. So I just, staff had asked for a little guidance on that. And, I think that would be a fine, look for that side elevation on the right side there. So just those are my comments.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Mosley?
Yeah, I'll make a motion with respect to 4909 Elkins Avenue in the parking Elkins Neighborhood Conservation Zoning Overlay that we approve the proposal as submitted with the staff's conditions, and noting in item 4 that majority means majority, and so location in the bump out certainly would be acceptable as long as we get a majority, and certainly leave it up to the designer and final plans to meet that condition, but it wouldn't necessarily have to be the front of the house.
Okay.
Well, it would need to be on that elevation, but not the front, the windows near the frontage portion of the house.
Okay. Let me be sure that Ms. Ziegler is got that down. Ms. Ziegler, is that a good explanation?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Vice Chair Stewart.
I second Mr. Mosley's motion.
Okay, there's a first, a second, and I will entertain a vote. Vice Chair Stewart.
Yes.
Commissioner Fitz.
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson.
Yes.
Let's come back on that, Commissioner Johnson.
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Jones.
Yes.
Commissioner Mayhall.
Yes.
Commissioner Mosley.
Yes.
Commissioner Price.
Yes.
And Commissioner Williams.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And again, thank you to the applicant for working with staff. We move forward to Fatherland Street, which looks like 717 Fatherland Street. And Ms. Warren will also be the presenter here, and the number to call in is 629-255-1911.
Sorry, just 1 second. I'm missing a page. I'll pull it up here quickly. Sorry. Okay, my apologies. This is an application for infill on a vacant lot in the Edgefield Historic Preservation Zoning Overlay. Here's an aerial view of the subject lot. The proposed infill is appropriate in terms of height, form, and scale. The proposed foundation height is appropriate, and the design meets all of the setback requirements. With final staff approval, the proposed materials are appropriate as well. There is a dadu proposed, which meets the design guidelines. In conclusion, staff recommends approval with the conditions in your report and on the screen.
Thank you, Ms. Warren. And applicant, please announce yourself, if you would like to speak. Okay.
I did speak with the applicant, and they are in agreement with the conditions.
Okay, very good. So we will waive that response from the applicant. And Ms. Ziegler, are there any other comments, public comments, and call-in?
Yes, we have a comment from Councilmember Withers. Councilman, are you still on the call? Would you prefer to speak?
Oh, I think my statement that I emailed is fine. So thank you.
Okay. Ms. Warren, would you like to read it?
I will. The email reads, Jenny, I wanted to write a quick note of praise for the design of the new infill application at 717 Fatherland Street in Edgefield. I can't imagine a design that is more detailed and customized to the unique context of that particular block of Fatherland than what architect Van Pond has presented. Well done. Brett A. Withers, Metro Council District 6.
Thank you, Councilman Withers, again, for your always thoughtful comments. And I see that the applicant has his hand raised. Please announce yourself.
Hi. Hello. There we are. I was fully muted. Thank you all for, can you all hear me?
And please announce yourself, your name, please.
Sure. This is Van Pond. I'm the architect for this project and working with the owners, Paul Hoffman and Peter Martino. And we are very happy to have worked with staff on this project and are, as Ms. Ziegler stated, amenable to the conditions. Okay. Thank you very much, everyone. If you have questions, I'm available.
Okay. Thank you for collaborating with staff. Ms. Ziegler, do we have any other comments or call-in?
No call-ins and no other comments.
Okay. We'll close public hearing. Commissioners, any questions to the applicant or discussion? Or a motion? Commissioner Fitz.
Sorry, I'm pulling back up the address. With regards to 717 Fatherland Street or 0 Fatherland Street, I would like to make a motion to approve staff recommendations with the listed conditions.
Thank you, Commissioner. Vice Chair Stewart.
Second.
Okay, there's a first, a second. I entertain the vote at this time. Vice Chair Stewart?
Yes.
Commissioner Fitz?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Can you come back on that, Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Jones?
Yes.
Commissioner Mayhaw?
Yes.
Commissioner Mosley?
Yes.
Commissioner Price,
Yes.
and Commissioner Williams.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. We are on to our final project, which is at 1310 A and B McKinney Avenue. Ms. Sajid will be the presenter, and the number again for the public to call in is 629-255-1911.
This application is to construct duplex infill at 1310 McKinney Avenue, which is currently a vacant lot. As proposed, the project meets all the design guidelines for Eastwood. The two-story form of the infill, as well as the height and scale, are appropriate for the historic context on this block, which includes 1, 1.5, and 2-story historic homes. And here are the side elevations, and then some perspectives that were included with the application. And then here are context photos of this block of McKinney Avenue. The next slide has a couple more. And in conclusion, staff recommends approval with conditions as outlined in the staff recommendation.
Thank you, Ms. Sajid. Is the applicant on the line? And if so, please announce yourself. Okay. I believe the applicant is not present or wishes to pass on comment. So, Ms. Ziegler, do we have any other public comments or call-ins?
No call-ins and no comments.
Okay, we will close public hearing. By the way, this is not the last project. I apologize. We have one more. And so close public hearing. And commissioners, any questions, comments, or a motion? Yes, Commissioner Mayhall.
With respect to 1310 McKinney Avenue, I make a motion to adopt the staff recommendations as put forth.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Price?
I second.
Okay. There's a first and a second, and I will entertain the vote. Vice Chair Stewart?
Yes.
Vice Chair Stewart?
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Fitz?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Jones?
Yes.
Commissioner Mayhall?
Yes.
Commissioner Mosley?
Yes.
Commissioner Price?
Yes.
And Commissioner Williams?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioners. And Ms. Ziegler, please remind us again the one that we are to hear now.
1615 Forest.
You're on. 1615 Forest. Okay. And staff member to present, please.
Yes, this is Melissa Baldock. Just one second, I'm pulling up my presentation. So 1615 Forest is a circa 1915 bungalow that contributes to the historic character of the Laughlin Springs neighborhood. The applicant proposes to remove an existing addition and to construct a new rear addition. The project includes removing an existing addition. The addition's date of construction is not known, but it does appear on this 1957, it does not appear on this 1957 Sanborn map, so it is assumed to have been built after 1957. Staff finds that the addition's date of construction and its location at the rear, where it's not highly visible from the street, do not contribute to the historic character of the house. The applicant also proposes to change the windows openings on the right facade towards the back of the house, which is considered partial demolition. Staff finds that because this window opening is in the back half of the house, and because the opening will only be shifted slightly, that the alteration is appropriate demolition under the design guidelines. Here is the site plan. The historic house, including its porch and addition that is to be removed, is approximately 1,512 square feet. The addition that will be removed will be approximately 332 square feet. The proposed addition will increase the existing footprint of the house by approximately 1,500 square feet, meaning it will double the existing footprint of the house with the existing addition taken into consideration. Staff finds this to be appropriate in this instance because particularly because 414 square feet of the addition will be for the covered rear porch, which will remain open in nature. Here's a first floor plan. The addition is inside the back corners of the house for a depth of 2 feet on the right side and 4 feet on the left side, after which the addition steps back out on the ground floor to line up the side walls of the house. The addition includes a ridge raise, which is inset 2 feet and extends up 2 feet, meeting the design guidelines for ridge raises. The dormers at the second story level are inset 2 feet from the wall below. The addition steps down so the floor line and the foundation are below that of the historic houses. Its eave height will match those of the historic house. Overall, staff finds that the addition's height and scale to be appropriate for the historic house and to meet the design guidelines. So staff recommends approval with the condition that staff approve all windows, doors, the roof shingle color, and the location of HVAC and utilities prior to purchase and installation, finding the proposed project meets Section 2B and 3B of the design guidelines for Laughlin Springs.
Okay. Melissa, please just keep the recommendation on. Thank you very much.
Sure. No problem.
May not have pulled that up. Okay. Is the applicant on the line? If so, please announce yourself with your name. Okay. Please raise your hand if you can. Okay, I don't see anyone unmuted or hands raised. Ms. Ziegler, may they be a caller coming in? Ah, here we go. Okay, please announce yourself. I do see your hand raised. However, we don't hear you. There you go.
Can you hear me now?
Let's try that again.
How about now? Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you. Please say your name.
Hi, I'm Cheyenne Smith, and I'm the designer for this project. Yeah, so I'm in agreement with the staff's recommendation. I know that I guess Melissa or Mr. Withers, one, will probably read in something. We have received some neighbor feedback and feedback from Brett, and don't have much of rebuttal prepared since we were planning to be getting approval on the consent agenda. So I don't know if I need to get into any of that now or wait until that is read or how to proceed from here.
Okay. Thank you for being on the line, and we'll hold on that. Commissioners may have questions for you.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Ziegler, do we have any call-ins?
No callers and no comment beyond Councilmember Withers, which Ms. Baldock can read.
Okay. Councilman Withers, would you like to speak live, or would you like your statement to be read?
I think just reading my statement is fine, and if there's any additional questions or requests for feedback from the commission or the applicant, I'd be happy to talk through that as well after that. Thank you.
Thank you, council member. Okay.
Okay, so I have, this is Melissa Baldock, and I have Councilmember Withers' statement. A neighbor has contacted me with a concern about the size of the rear addition proposed for 1615 Forest in the Laughlin Springs East End District. While I do not have a particular position on this application, I believe that it warrants a full discussion by the commissioners. It seems that discussions about what is appropriate size for additions relative to the historic structure or the existing house, including any present additions, is a topic of some deliberation. I do agree that this contributing structure is relatively small, particularly absent the present of additions that are proposed to be removed. On the other hand, the italicized language in the design guidelines state that, quote, ridge raises are most appropriate for one-story, single-gabled buildings without clipped gables, and that require more finished height in the attic. The purpose of the ridge raise is to allow for conditioned space in the attic and to discourage large rear or side additions, end quote. I have not heard any objections to this project based upon the requested ridge raise, for which this structure is a textbook candidate. But what I believe is worthy of deliberation by the commissioners is whether the overall dimensions of this addition would be considered to be a large rear addition as described in the second sentence of the above text. The application also indicates that a dadu or outbuilding is planned. My sense is that while this application does maintain the character of the contributing structure facing forest, but the volume of the rear addition and the potential to add an outbuilding adds up to a lot. I can understand the neighbor concern about this ratio of addition to contributing structure in the overall project. I believe that this application makes a good test case for weighing different perspectives on applying the design guidelines to additions, and I look forward to hearing commissioners' deliberations on this or similar cases to help the staff advise applicants, neighbors, and me going forward. Thank you, Brett Withers.
Thank you, Councilmember Withers. Mr. Smith, do you have any kind of rebuttal to that comment? You are on mute.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right. All right. Yeah, I mean, all that I guess that we really have to say is, as I mentioned earlier, we don't have much prepared since we were planning on a consent agenda approval. You know, I guess we appreciate the comments. All that I could add to it is we are fine being a part of a conversation. We would obviously prefer not to have to make any alterations to the plans. And so we put a lot of time and effort into this with the staff. And I've probably done over 100 projects with in historic overlays and bothered all the staff members, especially Melissa Baldock more than anyone. So I work with her from the beginning on every single project. I'm not one to get too crazy with things. So I want to make sure things are designed per the guidelines all the way through. And that's what we did on this one. We've calculated this on other projects the same way. Should the guidelines change in the future, happy to follow those guidelines. So I guess I just ask that, you know, we kind of keep everything as is. I'm here to answer any questions regarding specific dimensions, questions, anything that you may have. One thing I will note is the DADU is only shown for proportion reasons only. It's not a part of this application. It's to show that we're maintaining the required 20 foot of separation between the two structures if someone chose to build that in the future. But it is not part of this application. And yeah, I think that may be it. I'm here for any questions you may have.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Smith. And please hold on. We may have questions.
Sure. Thank you.
I know Commissioner Mosley's concerned of whether we can ask questions when we close public hearing. But I think if it is under question and discussions, I think that's appropriate. Believe so, unless legal tells me otherwise. Okay. Close public hearing. And commissioners, would you like to see any, please indicate if you want it. Yes, thank you, Ms. Warren. If you have any questions or would need to see any other drawings on the application. And again, perhaps address some of the comments that Councilmember Withers has presented to us. Okay, Commissioner Fitz first.
I'll just go ahead. I think what was in question, you know, is the size of the addition as it relates to the size of the existing house. And I found the explanation in the staff report, I guess, very clear and concise. We're, you know, allowed to double the footprint of the house, and that is what is being done. It does take into account the additions that are being removed. So that's why I think when you visually look at this, it looks like the addition is more than double, that the footprint's more than double the house, but you're not seeing the existing footprint that was there to begin with. So I think that's why this may be misleading as to how much is being added on and how much the footprint of the building is being increased. But given the staff explanation of it, I think it falls into what is allowed. And And then there was a question about the dadu. But the dadu, when you look at the site plan, it seems to be, and I know that it's not really under review right now, but it's proposed in the future. But it's maintaining the required, the required distance and spacing set back from the back of the house. And I guess I'm more just kind of explaining what staff has explained in their report. So, thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Mosley?
I may be asking a rhetorical question, but certainly the Councilmember Withers was encouraging some further dialogue, and so this will qualify into that. Is there some question here about whether the shed dormers are appropriate in this instance? And I don't know that they're necessarily inappropriate. I guess I would for the purpose of discussion, I would perhaps pose that, or I wonder how the staff might respond in this case. And we're not in the business of redesigning things for applicants, but if you took this addition and repeated the eave and gable orientation of the front and put that on the back in lieu of the additional dormer, and then you would come close to, if not have, a shed dormer that would connect those two. I wonder if you were into that discussion about shed dormers and some of those things. We certainly would see it in a different light if that were the form that the design team had chosen to take. It gets into some conversations about what's massing and scale and some of those other things that obviously they've taken a certain position and the staff in their evaluation finds it appropriate. So I wanted to go down that line. Maybe is that I don't know if that's in degrees or gradients more or less appropriate or just different. Those are some of my comments.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. Vice Chair Stewart.
I think that Councilman Withers' question is a good question. It's one that we struggle with every session that we have with homes that we feel are being expanded beyond what's reasonable. I think that with this particular instance, though, the site is smaller than a number of the sites that we see. And even with that, they're maintaining the 20 feet between the proposed future outbuilding and the back of the open porch, and then another 15 feet. So in essence, the massing of the house is 35 feet from the proposed outbuilding. I think what the designer's done here is to take advantage of the grade change on the site and the ability to do the roof raise to be able to get that second level in. And in reality, what the roof raise was designed for is to be able to get enough headroom for an upper level, which this house doesn't appear to have without the ridge raise. So yes, it's a good question. It's one we struggle with every session. And I think that this wound up being a reasonable solution for this site. And I think we would have trouble finding backing within the guidelines to be able to refuse this and to deny this application.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Commissioner Price.
Yes, hello. If this application is approved, I would like to hear more from commissioners and/or staff about how it squares with the italicized language in the guidelines that say, I'll quote, "No matter its use, an addition should not be larger than the existing house, not including non-historic additions, in order to achieve compatibility and scale." Then it goes on to say that this will allow for the retention of small and medium-sized homes in the neighborhood and the value of diverse housing types. To my eye, looking at this, not counting the non-historic addition, as the guidelines say, this is well over twice the size of the original house. Plus it gets a ridge raise. So if the commission I don't understand how that squares. And I tend to share the concerns of neighbors and Councilman Withers who brought it up for discussion. So I'd like to hear if anyone else has a comment or how they feel about that.
Thank you, Commissioner. Would one of the staff like to address that?
This is Robin. Yes, that's where we started in looking with additions, and then over the years, it evolved, and the commission kind of changed that. So that's the advice, the direction we've been giving applicants, is that all of the existing building, whether all of it's historic or not, whether part of it's going to be demolished or not, would count. Not saying that that's how we should continue. I'm just explaining how it's evolved over the years.
Okay, so then if we ever get back to the design guideline consolidation, then I would imagine that that's going to be a section that's going to need to be revised if we're going to allow additions that are clearly larger than the original small house, which is what we have here.
Other commissioners' comments? Okay. How about I entertain a motion? And then we will see how our votes go. Or do you have other questions for staff? Okay. Vice Chair, I'm putting you on the spot. Comments, please.
Madam Chair, to put a motion on the table for us to vote on, but still being open to additional discussion, I will go ahead and move that we approve this project with staff recommendations.
Okay, there is a motion on the table. We will entertain a second if that is true. Commissioner Johnson.
I will second the motion.
Okay, there's a first, there's a second. Are there any other discussions before we take the vote? All right. I will take the vote. Yes or no, please. Vice Chair Stewart.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Commissioner Fitz?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
I believe Commissioner Jones has left the table. Commissioner Mayhall?
Yes.
Commissioner Mosley?
Yes.
Commissioner Price?
No.
And Commissioner Williams?
Yes.
Okay. I believe we have majority and the motion passes. Okay. Thank you, commissioners. Further discussions in the future. All right. Ms. Ziegler.
Yes, I just wanted to let you know we have one quick announcement. On Friday, February 12th, the Metro Historical Commission and Tennessee State University will host the 2021 Annual Nashville Conference on African American History and Culture. This is the conference's 40th anniversary, and it'll be the first ever virtual version of this event. So in celebration of this milestone, conference registration includes access to the half-day online conference, a commemorative lapel pin, and a copy of the newly revised book, Profiles of African Americans in Tennessee. So you can log on, you can sign up now, and I hope to see you all there.
Okay, so this is the first virtual, is that correct, Robin?
That's correct.
Okay, that'll be quite interesting. We do invite everyone to attend. Should be a good one. All right, any other comments? Robin, anything else?
No, that's all from us.
All right. Well, again, this is the beginning of 2021. Thank you, commissioners, for your time, your discernment, and always the comments. Councilman Withers, we acknowledge your presence as well. And to applicants, again, thank you for your patience and also for your collaboration with the staff. And by that, we will adjourn and be safe, be well, and peace on.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information about this and other programs, visit nashville.org.